the situation between Israel, Palestine. These nations are very powerful nations. How do you think they should approach this war? Should they approach this with prudence and care, not to invoke more suffering?
Well, I would like to see a ceasefire and try to negotiate a way out of it. The best would be some sort of negotiated settlement. I did read in The Guardian today, that there are people in Israel calling for Netanyahu to go for two reasons. One, that he has just been presided over the biggest massacre of Jews Israel's ever known, total failure of security. And the other, because he's probably got them into the situation in the first place. Mm-hmm. If there was a much more moderate Israeli government, and the trouble is the Palestinians don't really have anyone to speak with their voice. Hopefully Biden and others will carry on trying to mediate and calm things down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully
not very successfully.
Yeah. Hopefully some interventions from other countries could, calm things down without causing more havoc as well, right? Because we got to be careful to draw that line, right? If other countries jump in, we want
or they support one side versus the other.
It has to be done peacefully.
But
essentially,
there is the United Nations who should be doing. This is the sort of job the United Nations should be trying to do. But they haven't actually done it for a very long time.
I definitely agree, and what I want to bring upon on that point is in situations like this, when a country gets attacked and viciously like this, or what Hamas has done, obviously their leaders are going to react very emotionally, because I'm looking at this from far away, and of course if someone did something to my family, my judgment and my decisions will be very different to what should be done for a long-term peace. So I always ask myself, where is the United Nation, this organization that we have that should be kind of this neutral ground that can be like, we should calm down and try to figure out a way to not escalate this even further.
Yes, no, I think that the problem is you've had so many years of this really unhappy situation where the poorer Palestinians have been exploited, in a very, very small territory, and the coexistence. Everyone seems to assume that the coexistence was all right. Well, it clearly wasn't, and Hamas have been able to exploit that.
Yeah,
and I think there's now a logistic problem for Israel. If you've got tunnels and people hidden in civilian population, that makes it much, much harder. But I think it's very important that we remember that the whole concept of genocide came out of the Holocaust. And the whole concept of the Geneva Convention, and again, it was a Holocaust thing. And these are crimes against humanity, some of them. Certainly killing innocent people in an unprovoked attack is clearly genocide and a crime against humanity. Whether it was totally unprovoked, if you sort of sit in Israel lobbing things at your neighbors all the time, that is provocation, even if it's not large scale. The same goes for Hamas, who were busy lobbing things back, or who were lobbing things. But one thing would mean, when that hospital was tragically hit, and there's this instant explosion, did Israel do it or did Hamas do it? If you asked someone like the United Nations to say, all right, come in and tell us what happened, because the evidence will be there, if to someone on the ground who's an expert would be able to work it out. Rather than saying, oh, you did it. Well, actually, no, let's stop. Let's see actually what the evidence tells us. That would be, it would give the United Nations a much more proactive role.
I agree. Yeah, because a lot of the headlines also that I see is always saying Israel says this, or Israel
pointing
force.
Fingers, right?
No, I mean, like they're saying always what Israel is saying, or Hamas is saying this, or they're saying this, but there isn't sort of like an independent or third-party investigation into figuring out
if
the
you
evidence.
Actually could find out what had happened. I mean, I think from what we're seeing here, it does look as though it was a Hamas unexploded rocket. And, there's bits of evidence that seem quite sensible. But we shouldn't be relying on, the press to pick it apart. We should have a much more independent, authoritative body.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be very useful, and given the circumstances, for sure. And like you said, right, it's not like one particular group is to blame here. I think both sides were oppressed, and maybe a third party would kind of be able to regulate things and sort everything out.
The problem is, I think it's probably a much wider set of conflicts that does go back a long way, because it would be very easy for the rest of the Middle East to sort of suddenly explode.
Yeah, of course.
You've got some. I thought when Biden said to don't be consumed by rage like we were after the bombing, that was very wise, but it's not clear who's pulling whose strings, and I don't think it ever will be. Certainly not from here and just sort of watching the news.
It's difficult. It's difficult to piece together, what the truth is at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's such a complex issue, right? It's been going on for years, and that's kind of why I think, tying it back to World War II and understanding the Holocaust as well, it all kind of ties in, I think, somehow.
I think it goes back much earlier. It goes back to the fall of the Ottoman Empire, when you've got the Ottoman Empire. This is the end of the First World War, as you're talking about 1819. When they decided they would chop these countries up. You've also got, so some went to France, some went to Britain, and of course the Brits offered the same piece of land to two groups, which isn't good. You've also got another change, which is that you've got the move from you've got a move from Bedouin and mobile communities that don't have a fixed base to moving into cities and things, and massive overcrowding. I mean, Gaza does seem to be hugely overcrowded, even if it had all the services it needs. So you've got an awful lot of societal changes over the last century.
Yeah, Gaza is very, very densely populated from what I've seen, like the images and videos. It's even if they had everything they needed, I find it's very overcrowded.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back and, make another parallel here with your grandmother and kind of World War II. So your grandmother, Paula, showed a lot of empathy towards, some of the kids being transported from Nazi-occupied territories into hostels. So how do you think we stop the cycle of violence that's, being perpetrated right now?
Well, I think one thing that is very sad is that we've got much better at killing people. Warfare is, you've got drones, who don't even involve people killing people. You've got the whole of technology guiding things. So you can kill a lot of people quickly, and that, I think, it possibly dehumanizes it. It's some of the numbers that we've heard in the last 2 weeks have been enormous, and we don't really understand what those enormous numbers mean. There've been some very brilliant ideas of trying to explain to school children how many people were killed in the Holocaust, because it's a vast number that you can't really cope with. And there was a button project in America where they collected up enough buttons and put them in jam jars, just looked at what sort of volume those buttons took. And that gave a way of sort of seeing what people, what might give a way of understanding what the people were, how many people were killed. And I think what we've not reacted to that much in the last couple of weeks is the vast numbers that they suddenly announced. Oh well, they died. So that's partly just because technology's got better, I don't think we've got any nicer. And you've got the whole question of information. One thing that's changed, of course, is the pictures come out very quickly. Now, what was very clear from talking to the girls was how important photographs were. And I gave a talk in a school, and they were going, well, where did you get the photographs from? And I said, well, people went to studios and had pictures taken, or there were photographers in the streets. It's because the school kids don't actually know what a camera is. They're just used to using phones. But in the last war, or in 1938, there was no mobile phones. There was no internet. So information took much longer to come. I mean, in terms of hours and days and hours rather than instant. And I suspect there was propaganda. We know that the Nazis used a lot of propaganda and false radio programs and things here. But I don't think that it's the problem of the internet and polarization that you do get. And the speed that things can become quite nasty on the web.
So from what I understand, it's almost like, like you said, people haven't really gotten nicer. It's evolved into a modern, with a modern technology, and I guess now that different nations have become really strong, that has maybe been a deterrent from having one nation trying to take over the world or eradicate a group of people. But there is still conflicts of this sort that happens, and sometimes it does just boggle my mind why is it so difficult to reach an agreement on peace. But again, it's just so complex, and there's so much history, and also revenge, just simply revenge that each side wants to take upon the other. Yeah. And it's like, when is it going to be, where a side is going to say enough is enough?
Also, I just want to reiterate something you said about technology. Right now, with like increasing information of like the availability online, we don't even know which is true or what part of it is misinformation. So there is a lot of fear and a lot of fear mongering happening there, and I think technology definitely exacerbates the problem a little bit here.
Yeah. I think the problem is, until people actually say, well, it's quite all right to be different, and that, I respect you even though you've got completely different origins to mine, people are still going to argue about racial origins and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not just Israel. There are lots of other not so little skirmishes going on at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Ukraine, you've got a lot in Africa, where you've got different tribes, if you like.
We don't hear about that often. The ones in Africa, they're barely talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got, Sunni against, another group. It's historically, it's gone on forever almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
There's always war, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's almost as if it's just entrenched in our society. My other question was gonna be, I feel like the answer might be no, but with Israel and Palestine, ever find peace? Do you think there is such a possibility, even though it seems unattainable right now? From what it seems like we went back 50 years from this attack that happened, but could there ever be, and what would need to change?
I hope so. I think we all hope that there'll be some form of permanent solution. It's not tenable to go on sort of trying to kill each other. Yeah. So yes, though I don't know what it is. I think it's going to take some sort of arbitration.
Yeah, some kind of reform and some kind of, just change, right? Radical change here.
Radical, yeah, exactly. Do you think religious beliefs have, a lot to do with this also? Because because there's a lot involved with the religious sites there. And, you know, the Hamas groups likes to, you know, use Islam, but we know that Islam and most Muslims aren't the extremists that are portrayed, you know, especially in the media and whatnot. But do you think that the religious beliefs have a lot of, you know, influence and push towards this sort of violence?
Well, personally, I do. I think that you unfortunately, you've had wars between different types of Christians or different types of Muslims for and less perhaps different sorts of Jews. They do separate themselves. I've always had them, and I mean, what is so horrible is that it's all essentially, if it's all essentially all stemming from the same monotheistic belief. It's just split off at different times, and why it's tragic that people can't see that.
Yeah,
And of course, I've now offended every Christian and Jew and Muslim.
No, you didn't. No, we understand your point. You're saying, you know,
that they share more similarities than, you know.
Yeah, a lot of people are fighting, you know, with their religious beliefs, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of religions portray the same values, and everyone is trying to, you know, believe in a God that would, you know, bring them peace, really.
Yeah.
Right.
They have different names or different, you know, prophets. Well, except for Judaism, but it's almost as like, you know, if the religion is about finding peace and making,
joy in the world,
and reduce conflict, it almost seems like it's doing the opposite, where it's pushing people to take a side and then us versus them mentality.
Yeah, let's sit in my box, if you like, and my box is better than your box. And yes, I think that's really sad.